coaling box. So there's your axe, and there's your picks, there's a measuring stick.
But certainly, I mean, that's a very old tool.
Well, I've got to be 18 again now. Every morning, you would come out and you would parade in front of the Union Jack.
It was quite heavy digging, and there's presumably a drainage ditch that was being made there. There's a bit of boxing.
And it was so cold of a night time, your nose would be running now. In the morning when you woke up, your pillow was wet.
It was wrong entirely to send people to such, prisoners wouldn't be sent to such a place as that. They wouldn't allow prisoners to go to such a place as that.
You certainly look fit there, John.
They would have been made by them boys. But there's the photograph of crossing, the larger photograph of it.
We're talking pre-1932. This would have been pretty clear as far as trees was concerned. This would be a propaganda sheet against the countess.
It was a propaganda sheet continuously.
Right, that certainly was the case. Now, I can't remember. Just give me a second. I think it's the left fork.
On the northeast coast of England, in West Cumberland, in Scotland, in South Wales, 33 out of every 100 men are out of work. Half of these unemployed haven't had a job for a year or more. Industrial depression has thrown hundreds of thousands of workers on the scrap heap, not only in these 4 special areas as they are called, but in the other depressed areas as well. These men must be kept healthy. If there's no work at their old trades, they must be taught new ones and helped to move into more prosperous districts. Through its employment exchanges, the Ministry of Labour is contributing to the solution of this problem.
A Davy lamp.
That's it.
Is there a date on that?
Oh no, I don't think so.
Because some of them got the pit.
Oh, there's a name that they take Norfolk.
Oh, it's gone. It's gone.
It's gone.
God,
It's in a mine, I don't know, but
That's a hell of a one.
you see, when I started work on the ground, there was boys that height. And when they carried their lamp, you fancy carrying your lamp that height, you're nearly touching the ground.
At the age of 14, you earned 2 and 6.
2 and 6 a day.
14 and a half, 2 and 10.
2 and 10.
15, 3 and 4pence. 16,
4 and
4
3.
and 3pence.
And then 6 and so much.
And 6 and 8 when you were 18.
Then the point is, they didn't want you there.
Yeah, I got rid of you because you're on a man's wage.
That's right.
Yeah.
Sit down, Albert. Make yourself comfortable. Put your cap on the back of the chair. Now, you're Albert Lee. You live at 6 Lakeland Avenue, Seacliff, Whitehaven. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You're 21 years of age. You weigh about 10 stone 8. And you've been working at the colliery as a haulage hand. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And I take it, according to your records, you've done nothing but casual work since about October 1932.
Yes, sir.
So that your future, if you continue to work in the pits, is going to be not a very good one. Is that right?
No, sir.
Well, Albert, you know what it means. It means starting right away from the beginning. It means learning a new trade and starting again at the beginning. And it means that you're going to live away from home during the course of your training, and at the end of your time you'll be found a job which again will be away from home.
Well, when you were unemployed, you were only allowed 26 weeks unemployment benefit. After that, you were transferred to parish
Relief.
relief. Men on parish relief, able-bodied men on parish relief, would be told to get out there at a certain time in the morning to a certain street, to the pipes to be laid, the trenches to be dug. They would get a pair of boots and some working clothes, and they would get a shilling a day on top of their parish relief money. And I had to go.
The feeling in the country among the unemployed people was getting serious. You could sense it. You're signing on the door and various things, you know. And I think that would be one of the reasons that these places was organised, to take it away from each other.
In country districts, there's a second type of centre. Unemployed men who are considered unsuitable for learning a skilled trade or who are ineligible may go to what are called instructional centres. Here the Ministry of Labour tries to counteract the effects of long periods of enforced idleness. They try to make men fit again for unskilled work. The men come in weekly batches from depressed areas all over the country.
This is a part of our Galeshire here.
And this map is a recent map, isn't it?
This is a recent AA map. Now here's here down here is Glenbranter. The camp was in Glenbranter. Now we're not far from a place. This is Loch Fyne here. There's Inverary across here, and then the Inverary Castle's here, home of the Duke of Argyll.
Yes.
We were in this area here.
I first came across knowledge of labour camps in 1979 whilst I was a student at Northern College in Barnsley. I'd been reading a book by two historians called Branston and Hyman, and just to throw away a couple of lines about labour camps, which intrigued me because I was completely unaware of their existence. From that point, I then started researching them, doing the normal things like sending letters to local papers and so on and so forth, which brought me into contact with men who had been in the camps. And from that point, I then started gathering information quite rapidly. Photograph of the one in Treglog, which is what makes me... The major theme of this story for me is the fact that a considerable number of men, some 150,000 at least, had been sent away to camps that had been erected in areas in Britain which even today are very, very remote. Almost all of them were set up on Forestry Commission land. Those that weren't located on Forestry Commission land were set up on private land, owned by big landowners and so on and so forth.
Okay.
The government of the day officially said that the young men of that day, being unemployed, were unfit. So we've decided to open these labour camps, get the young men in the labour camps, get them doing some work, get them fit. And I thought that was a joke, because at Glenbranter, the camp we were at, there was no room for unfit men.
Would you mind start telling us which camp you went to and what year that was?
It was Hamsterley Camp in 1935, winter.
Right.
I thought, go to the camp, train for a job, get a job, and it was all right.
And did you get a job from going there?
You're joking.
There's my mate that went with me. He was serving French for there.
Now he was
My mate.
a miner with you, wasn't he?
Yes, he was a miner.
Yeah.
He was ex-miner.
Yeah. And he was made redundant at the same time as you.
They said I can go to Carshalton, London, or Shobden. So I said, put me down for Shobden. That's the only article I got. And then, as they say, we had the train wanted to go to Lambston, Kingsland, and then the lorry picked us up and took us up to the camp. Look at Kestrel, boy. On that post.
Oh, beautiful.
Dennis? Kestrel. On the post.
Kestrel Hawk, look.
Can you point it out? Oh,
There he goes. There he is, look. This is the camp and this is the site. And we'll go up as far as here now and I'll show you exactly the situation of the camp. Go up a bit further. Right. Stop there, but you can put it right now. I'll put it right now. This is the camp proper. On around here was a stone patch.
Yes.
And there we met every Monday morning to get our orders. The storeroom was out there.
Yep.
The canteen was up there. The shower bars are across there. The living quarters right up on the top there, 7 huts. And in the middle there was a tower with a tank on the top of the water. That's what you call there's the kitchen, as I said, look. But there was a shower hut that way. Right?
Which of these was your hut?
That one was the star, number one.
Oh, right, excellent.
He slept up there now on the floor. There was 2 trestles about 6 inches long, high, 3 planks, straw mattress, blankets, and he was on the floor, all sleeping there on the floor.
And how many people would be in one hut?
About 30, could be 28, could be 30, 32, it could be that.
Your own beds?
Yes, you've got to make all your own beds up first thing in the morning.
Can I have my bed up beside the stove there, Mr. I'm subject
Well,
to
if there's somebody that likes to give you his place, you certainly can.
Yes, thank
now,
you.
You'll get your own kit, 6 blankets, a bed, and 3 trestles board and a box complete. You'll find everything nice and comfortable. Will you, one of you stand just there, please? Another one just there, another one up there, another one in the next place, another one up the next place. Now, you're going to sign for this kit you're getting. Now, will you sign just there, please? Excellent. Just sign there, please. After you've got your kits, I'll take you down to get your grub, see?
Have you been to this sector before? This one, I think one at one. Was it all right? Yes.
This would have been the first building you would have come to on entering the camp, the administration where senior officers were. And along here, along this stretch here, now grown over by trees and bushes and so on and so forth, you can't actually see them now, but still the original foundations of the other administration huts. And along here would also have been the officers' mess, as they would have called it in those days. There would have been one hut there, you can just about make out the foundations over there, another hut here, and so on and so on. 100 men either side, because this camp had a full complement of 200. So certainly 100 men in 10 huts that side and 100 men in 10 huts this side.
Jack went to the butcher's the other morning. He says, I want a sheep's head. The butcher says, how do you want it cut? He says, as near the tail as possible.
Right, now I want to claim your attention for a moment or two, lads. First of all, while I give you a word of welcome, and then so that I can give you a few tips in order that you'll know what we stand for here, and again, what we in turn expect from you. Your own experience will have taught you that long spells of unemployment tend to make a man what Leslie would call soft or flabby. It's our purpose here to help those of you who've become soft to get back to that state of fitness in which you can hold your end up on a job of work alongside other people who've been more fortunate, or in the case of those of you who have not yet become flabby, then to help to keep you fit. You'll understand too that with 200 fellows living and working together here, we must have a set of rules. You've each had a copy of those rules, and I propose later to deal with those. But in the main, what is required of you is that you shall behave much as you would do at home.
You were more or less forced to go to these camps. You'd done 12 weeks, and it was all regimentalised. They were all ex-army officers, ex-NCOs, and they run the camp They were on nissen huts, and the beds were only about that height, 10 inches. There were 3 boards, and what they were actually straw palliasses, you know, and everything was regimental.
You'll be employed later on fairly heavy outdoor work. But for the first 2 or 3 weeks, while you're feeling your feet and while you're being toned up in preparation for the heavier work, we shall employ you on a number of light duties round about the camp, in the metal workshop, wood workshop, and you'll get some physical training.
There's one old fella there, 25 years in the Argyll and Sutherland Highlanders. Big John Sutherland, I'll always remember him. Big John, he stood there, he was a big, well-built man. He was about 50-year-old, you know, and smoked his pipe, and this captain come up. "Why don't you shave this morning?" He took his clay pipe, "What's Pat? Who the fucking hell are you to tell me when to shave?" Oh, sorry for swearing.
No, it's all right, you carry on.
It's all right. I have told you to tell me when to shave. I'm a civilian.
When I first came here 20 years ago, that first hut we looked at, there was indeed inside there many tools which I assumed were used by the camp labour. Some of them were certainly like this, and others were huge two-handled jobs, absolutely massive blades on them, spades or whatever you call that part, and double-handled tool, as well as saws and all kinds of things that they would have used in forestry work.
It was a two-handed saws. We didn't have the chainsaw or nothing like that. It was two-handed. And as you mentioned yourself, you said it was a very hard work. Well, it was a case of January, February, March. It was that cold. You want to keep warm.
One was digging the trenches, and the fellow, you were down below, and he was walking backwards and forwards along the top of the trench, and I was keeping an eye on you. Like I said before, if anybody just slackened up for some reason, he was on top of you. Get him up, you'd bloody move, and that was just Paris.
That's pretty harsh treatment, isn't it?
Oh, especially when you're sweating.
Yeah.
You're sweating down here, you see.
We'd go to the man in charge, and he'd take us up to the quarry, follow him up, and take us to the quarry, and then we'd break stone all day. And that's how we worked. And then we carry on another week. There used to be a stable here for horses.
Right.
And there used to have wagons with the blokes on the top who used to be sitting down like the American carts, you know. And they'd be loading the stone out in the quarry and putting them on there and taking them down the road, Belgrade Road, yeah.
All right, yes.
And putting them on the road, side of the road, and we were breaking them up into up to 2 1/4.
They watched everybody in the camp, who was malingering, who wasn't, things like that. And if they were malingering, they just took them into the office. There's your travel warrant, you know.
And did that happen regularly?
That happened quite often.
Right. So that meant that they actually lost their dole for 6 weeks?
So after the jobs, they were cut 6 weeks off a dole when they got back. They'd cut down all the trees all round the camp, and then they were up in the hills, and they were building concrete paths. And the culverts and that, or the mountain streams, we built all them. And I didn't know at the time it was Fitzroy MacLean's ground. He was a landowner. And you couldn't blame the local people because that was their life, forestry work and that kind of thing. And you couldn't blame them for showing the animosity towards you, because if they heard we were only getting 4 shillings, well, they put it bloody slave labour.
Them forests at that time of day belonged to the match people, Bryant and May. They were all big miles and miles of forest. So we were the cheap labour doing preparatory work for what would be permanent work, and the time come when these trees would be cut down.
The National Unemployed Workers Movement all over the country, I think, were producing the slave camp special, which was exposing the slave camps and giving news about them. They mention here that the food is putrid, the discipline harsh, and the general condition becoming unbearable. This one is a South Wales Slave Act special, which they published in January 1935, right at the beginning of it. And they are warning here that their benefits are being stopped if they were refusing to go to the camps, etc. At the bottom here it says, the united front is the main weapon for successful struggle. Every worker must assist in forging it. The united front was the National Unemployed Workers Movement, the Independent Labour Party, and the Communist Party.
Okay.
There's their objects, and there are their immediate demands.
Yes. What year did you get this then, man?
About 1934 or 5, I think it would be. Yeah. Among their objects, for instance, used to be to fight against all attempts of the employing class to use the unemployed to lower the working class standards and conditions, and to actively participate in defending the workers engaged in industrial disputes, to compel full trade union rates and conditions on all schemes of employment for the unemployed.
But when old Harry McShane visited the camp, and the old Manny Shenwell, he was a labour man for the Gorbals.
Yes.
And Manny Shenwell was the top man for the old NUMM, National Unemployed Workers Movement. And they went to the camp, and they refused them entry. They wouldn't let them talk to any of the boys in it. And they were told, they asked about they were promised 17 shillings, their full dole money. And now they turned round and they said that they were only getting 4 shillings because the rest went to their keep.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're working 8 hours a day in all kinds of weather.
Discipline from within. I daren't read that. Explanation is the basis of this discipline of cooperation. The man's reaction under the discipline from within is not, I do this because I must, but I do this because I see the reason for it. There were a lot of unemployed camps which were run by organisations other than ACAC. But ACAC, so far as I recall, ran no more than 2 a year. But then colleges and other organisations within the 2 universities, Oxford and Cambridge, they had their own private dues. It probably involved, I suppose, as far as Cambridge was concerned, providing some kind of holiday camp or work camp for maybe 400 or 500 people a year. There were laws, not laws of course, but I mean rules. Of course in those days undergraduates were prepared to accept rigidity to a greater extent than they would now. Interesting. But I mean things like choosing the staff and so on were considered, and how the advance party ran and what to do on arrival. Routine, reveille, breakfast, inspection of tents, parade. I think I was too immature, really, to understand fully what it meant to the men. The men that I met were good-hearted, and they weren't feeling that they were being patronised, although they were, I suppose, by people like me who had either a bad conscience or were spiritually or religiously motivated. The labour exchanges, as they were then called, took an interest in these camps. They not only selected the people that came to the camps, the unemployed men, but they also sent a representative to the camp to hand out the money, the dole as it was called. The menu for the day was breakfast and then 3 hours, 4 hours, I suppose, work on the land. I did feel strongly that it was a bit bizarre, to say the least. And looking back on it now, I realise it was. And I can't understand how the unemployed man even tolerated it. I mean, you can't imagine it happening now, can you? Possibly. I mean, any young unemployed man or woman would be incensed. In the afternoon, there was football and boxing and all the things that were supposed to be enjoyable, and I think were enjoyed.
At the end of the day, the various gangs assemble and march back to the centre for their main meal.
I'm the camp steward of this centre. I have to serve 200 meals with 2 hot courses in 20 minutes. Today there's meat pie, peas and potato, then bread pudding and custard. There's porridge, bacon and beans for breakfast, ham, sauce and cake for lunch, bread and cheese for supper. The men have names of their own for many of the dishes I serve.
When you come home of an evening after your work, you got a full cooked meal, but the potatoes was half cooked, you know. Cabbage, you couldn't manage it. So you would just scot and scot. And I think there would be more left than was eaten.
I am the youngest of 3, by the way. And the brother who was next to me, he was away in the Hamsterley camp. When he arrived there, the food was very poor. There was insufficient food. There was a considerable amount of discontent amongst the people there. So along with a number of others, a few others, I would say, he got together and they formed something in the nature of a strike committee and decided that they would stay in their huts, refuse to come out to work and not allow anyone into the huts. They had taken precautions to ensure that they had food for themselves by taking it from the storehouse. Everyone stood very firm. No one would give way, either the strike committee or the mass of the unemployed who were there. And after several days, agreement was reached. The food was considerably improved, both in quality and in quantity.
Them that was living in Harry Lauder's house, they had the electricity. We had only oil lamps. And they thought, well, if they can have the electricity and they wouldn't give us any oil for the lamps. So they decided, they said, I was a climber.
Okay.
So they got the gear out for climbing up the pole, you know, and they gave me a big pair of heavy gloves to cut the wire, the electricity wire through a big house. And then they barricaded the huts. They refused to let us have any food. And the 4 bob, that was stopped. So they broke the camp up. And then after that, I got my 6 weeks, done my 12 weeks. I got my 6 weeks dole money, which was 17 shillings then. And they decided to send me to another camp.
The working day is over too at the Letchworth Training Centre. The men leave their machines and stream past the time clock. Tonight there is a dance in the canteen at this centre. The men are encouraged to meet local people so that when jobs are found for them away from their homes, they'll be accustomed to making new friends. These men represent for industry a new source of trained labour. The centres can supply to any part of the country men who have been well trained in a skilled occupation and only need experience in a job.
What was your overall opinion of that place?
At that particular time, I didn't compare it with a concentration camp because I didn't know anything about a concentration camp. For a lot of years, I used to think, different things. Why we were there in the first place? And the reason we were there, in my opinion, was to keep the peace.
What do you think would have happened, James, if you'd just walked out the camp?
Well, they sent the police after you.
Really? You thought they would have done that?
Well, I think they would have done.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you were told you had to stay there for 3 months. And I think they intended you to stop there for 3 months.
But what... I mean, again, the question arises, why would they want to do that? I mean, why would the government want to actually set up places like that to keep blokes like you in there?
I think because there were so many out of work people walking the streets. They weren't causing any trouble. They were just walking the streets, standing at the corner of the streets and having a bit of fun and games. That was it.
To me, it's another form of kidnapping. If you take a person to a place they don't want to go, keep them in that place and detain them, I think you're breaking the law. In my estimation now, but apparently that was part of the system.
When I first saw it, I didn't know then until I'd seen it on the telly, concentration camps. If there had been a wire fence round it, it would have been a concentration camp.
Working in Shobdon, working all day, working in Shobdon for 8pence a day. If we would grumble, the boss would say, get down to the office and get on your way. Roll on the train that takes me home again, out to this godforsaken hole, where mosquitoes, bugs and flies scratch out your blinking eyes. Roll on the train that takes me home again.
Excellent. Yeah. Did you say blinking in the original?
Very likely. Very likely.